This is a basic lesson on chemistry, and we're just going to get down there and start tearing things apart and taking a look at how the basics of chemistry work. Now, we all know about atoms. Those are those little tiny smallest particles that are just about impossible to see. And those elements that are made up of all the same kind of atoms, we have a chart for that. And when they get together, we have one kind of atom for one kind of element. So these atoms, and they're made up of protons and electrons and neutrons. They're all kind of circling around this little thing, mostly made up of space. So what we do is we say, okay, so all of these atoms get together, and the same kind of atoms, they get together to create what we call an element. And this is an element chart. It's called the periodic table of elements. This Russian scientist is the one that kind of made this up, and he was kind of a funny guy. His name was DMITRI Mendeleev. And in 1869, when he put this together, he was actually a card player. And he would think about these chemicals in terms of groups. So the whole chart is really set up in groups. There are groups of alkaline metals, and there's groups of noble gases, and there's groups of heavy metals. And so each of these are a type of atoms. And those atoms that are together are creating what we call an element. Now, the periodic chart is kind of set up in columns and rows. And you can see over here, for each of these elements, there's a symbol for all of those atoms of the same kind. And they're lined up numerically from their atomic number, which is the lowest over here. And then as you go across it, going to the right, you get higher and higher atomic numbers. On there you can see the actual name of the element, and then its symbol, and then its atomic weight, which has to do with those protons and neutrons and electrons. So with this, let's take a look at the most common element, and that is the big C, carbon. Carbon's right here. Carbon is probably the most important element on planet Earth. It makes up, I think, something like 10 million different compounds. So when you have these atoms and they get together with other atoms and they come together as maybe being, let's say, sulfur, we now call this a molecule. Now, when molecules are of the same, this is just a pure substance. But when they come together with other atoms or different kinds of atoms, so here's some other different kinds of atoms coming together, another kind of element they get together. These molecules we call compounds. So compounds are different kinds of elements that get together in a molecule. When we break a molecule down, we get the individual atoms. So a fun way to become kind of familiar with all the names on this chart and the chemical symbols for each of the chart is to find symbols that can be put together to spell something. And that's what we're doing today. So let's put together the word book. Okay, our first element we're looking for is boron. Boron's an interesting element. In California, we have the biggest boron mine in the world. It's out there, 4 corners out in the desert. It's called boron. Now, boron's used for all kinds of things. It's kind of interesting. You could make golf clubs out of it, or you could make a tennis rack out of it. But it's also used in fireworks for the color green. It's also used in soaps and detergents. Borax is a really common substance and used a lot in industry. So our boron for our B in book is right up here. its atomic number is 5, and we got it right here, the symbol for B. How about O? I bet you know what O is. O is for oxygen. And of course, we use that to breathe, and we put it in tanks so that we can go scuba diving and have ability to give people oxygen that need oxygen when they are ill. So the oxygen element, all of those atoms get together to create what's called oxygen, and that's the atomic number 8. Oxygen on Earth always appears in 2s, so they're always paired up. So we got OO, and then we have K. K, which doesn't match, and you'll notice that some of the elements don't match what their symbol is. Potassium is one of those. Potassium is K, and this has to do with the Latin words for it. So for this one and about 11 other elements on the chart, the actual symbol does not correspond to what it is. So potassium is kind of interesting. You hear about potassium in our food. Of course, you eat the banana because it has a lot of potassium. But potassium is also a really important fertilizer and used in a lot of agriculture and industry. It's used in soaps and shaving cream, and it actually can remove the hair off a hide when they are tanning hides. So here's potassium over here. It's the 19th atomic number, and then its atomic weight is here, and the symbol is K. So we've spelled the word book. Let's try it again, because I'm going to ask you to spell, if you can, your name. If it starts with like a J, you can't do it, but you'll get as close as you can. Let's look up the names for the symbol in the name Tina. I like this one. So let's go to T-I. We're looking for T-I as in Tina. And that is right here, titanium. Have you ever heard of titanium? Titanium is a very strong metal. It's used for really expensive fishing poles. It's used in actually aerospace because it's so strong and lightweight, they use it for airplanes. So titanium is also important for medical. It's used in parts, prosthetics for like if you got your shoulder replaced, and it's so strong that they actually use it for like knee replacements and stuff. So titanium is a kind of metal, and that's right here. So Ti is the element titanium. The last one that we'll look for, and it has 2, is Na. Now, what you'll notice is if the symbol has 2 letters in it, the second one will be lowercase. So as the case of Na, which is sodium, which is your common salt on your table, sodium chloride that's used for salting food or salting roads to melt ice, is Na, and you'll notice the second letter is always lowercased. So if it's lowercase, you know there is 2 for that symbol. So today we've looked at some symbols and the way to spell certain words with the symbols of the elements. And as you looked at the periodic chart of elements, you'll notice that there are different kinds of ways that they're put together to form different molecules. So the atoms, they get together, form molecules, and the different kinds of atoms get together, form what we call compounds. So today I'd like you to do a little more work on this, and I'm going to challenge you to try to make up as many words with the symbols as you can and see how that works for you. This is the basic of all chemistry. Thank you today for visiting and learning just a little bit about the basics of chemistry.